do a melee weapon tier list. So I did remove S tier from this because honestly, none of the melee weapons are S tier. If you're going to argue that they are, I'm just going to make the obvious point that melee weapons cannot deal damage to turrets. So how can it be S tier if there's an entire enemy type that it can't interact with? That's just that. Like, even if you throw the melee weapon at it, it doesn't really do much. So and it's also finicky as well, depending on how the turret is like positioned relative to like the ceiling and everything. But outside of that, there are good melee weapons. There's like kind of okay ones, and there's like obviously bad ones. So we're going to be considering a few things. For stealth build, it doesn't really make sense to stealth up to like a dude and melee him for the sole reason of takedown existing. Like, why would I use a melee attack when there's a mechanic that insta-kills? Like, if I'm sneaking up to someone, I'm going to take them down instead of hitting with a melee. And also, why would I sneak up close when I can throw a melee weapon at a guy, kill him, and then pick it up again and reuse it indefinitely? That, I think, is the best use case of melee, is throwing them. Now, there are situations where meleeing is really good, and I'll call them out. So let's start with the two-handed weapons. I'll organize them by damage. So, like, this is your excellent, these are your very highs, these are your average. Yeah, these are very high. I think these are either average or high, but I tested their breakpoints, and it's weird. So the best melee is definitely the mace. I don't think that's going to surprise people. Is the mace S tier? No. And I'll just say this. If the mace was S tier, it should easily be able to kill all of the guards in Skethermore in an open firefight. Good luck. Seriously, like, now can you maybe, on the highest difficulty, can you maybe pull that off? I don't know. The other thing, though, is, like, you can't deal with the turrets. So, like, you have to play around the turrets the whole time. You could take out the robots if you can get close enough, but it's like there's parts of that region where if you're not already inside the base, you're going to be getting shot on the way into the base. So it's very difficult to take on a massive open firefight and then, you know, with a melee weapon. It's just the way the game is. You could argue that, you know, you can do X, Y, and Z, but the fact of the matter is guns can do that, grenades can do that, melee weapons cannot. You can do like sneak attacks, you can kind of be cheeky, but turrets you can't do sneak throws on them. The throw attack does no damage. The robots, you can hit them, you can one-shot robots, but you have to get close to them. And in open areas, that's very difficult to do because they kill you very quickly, especially the flamethrower ones. Because you have to, those are like ready to fight you close range. The axe, I think these three are obvious A tiers for these reasons. So when you build your melee build, if you get all the perks and you pop a combat stem, you can one-shot any full health bard robot, and then it'll force it to overheat, and then you can grab the core. That is massive. However, that is not always useful, and there are a lot of fight matchups where that is just not a thing, where there's either too many turrets around that are out of reach that will shoot you while you try to do this, or there's too many enemies supporting these robots. So if you try to like pull a core out, you're getting shot, or you're getting swarmed, or you're getting flanked. So like in the situations that comes up, it's good, but compared to other things that can just like hold an angle and just hit the robot for free all day, every day, or just nade the robot out, like it's just not as good. For sneak attacks, the sneak throws, I do think these are basically the best, even though these ones, I don't know that these one-shot with a sneak attack. I know these ones do for sure. I'm going to put these other two-handed in good. So all of the weapons one-shot the robots, but that's not the only thing we care about. Interestingly, against thralls, the mace with a full build, with the kill momentum, with the power attack damage, with a combat stim active, with the base melee attack damage perk, if you kill a thrall and trigger kill momentum, you can one-shot with a power attack a second thrall. So if there's like 3 thralls pushing you, you can 2-tap the first one and then 1-tap the remaining as long as you kill them within the buff duration, which is pretty good value because it saves you ammo and resources. But honestly, like thralls, the easiest thing to do if there's multiples is get them to kind of bunch up and just chuck some nades at them. Set them on fire, hit them with grenades, craft some grenades. That's the best thing to do to, like with them. Wasting your ammo on them is, I don't really recommend it. Against ferals, all these will probably one-shot ferals, the heavy. They'll all one-shot most things with the right build. But these are better as throwing weapons. Now the axe, you could argue, is the best throwing weapon because unlike the club, or unlike the cricket bat and the mace, the axe sticks in the target, so it's easier to recover. It's more consistently at a certain location relative to the target. Whereas with like the mace and the cricket bat, it could bounce off, it could deflect, it could roll down the hill, and then you're like playing this game of where the hell is my mace at? People have said you can farm maces from druids. I have never seen more than one mace across my 3 playthroughs, so I could just be unlucky. But, you know, take that with a grain of salt. In terms of throwing weapons, I do think the axe is better than the mace because it sticks to things. They both seem to be identical in terms of breakpoints. Now, if you're throwing these at thralls, I think it's 3 fully charged throws with the weapon throw perk for throw damage increase, and for the base melee damage increase, which does translate to throwing weapons. And also, if you throw a weapon at a melee enemy and it kills, it does trigger kill momentum. So if you have like a mace as your primary and like 3 axes, if you're doing a full-on melee build, you can throw an axe, get a kill, and then switch to mace. And with all that, with the combat stim and with kill momentum, the mace can one-shot headshot with a basic non-power attack. Most of these weapons can, like these up here can. So the mace's exceptional damage, I think, only matters potentially versus thralls. I haven't tested the axe versus thralls, but it seems that its higher base damage is almost like negligible, weirdly. So you might just want to run 4 axes if you're doing like a pure melee build. But if you are, I still recommend throwing a revolver in your inventory, crafting it to pristine, and carrying grenades with you, because the revolver will let you deal with turrets. Grenades will let you open fights with groups. It just makes the build better. But really, it's just grenades and guns being good. The Excalibur sword. So I tried to figure out a way to get this without breaking it, but it seems that it just breaks every time you try to pull it out. I tried doing different quests. I tried like using buffs and getting all these different things. I think it's just an Easter egg, but it's a high damage, very fast sword that causes bleed. It's okay. Its breakpoints are okay. I think a fully charged power attack with combat stim one-shots humans, which is fine. 2 shots otherwise, I think, with like basic attack. I think you can do like a kick and then do a 2-hit, and that will kill with a combat stim. Possibly even without it. But as a throwing weapon, I think it randomly kills out of a % chance. The description of the weapon throw training states that bladed thrown weapons may impale the enemy, so I think it's a % chance insta-kill that's not affected by headshots, because I've tested throwing weapons at enemies in the head. So like the other thing too with like the mace and the throwing axe, the cricket bat, if it just makes contact and you do a fully charged throw, it kills. So like if you are like you can be like this stealth build where you just like whip a cricket bat or an axe or a mace at a dude from grass, it will silently kill. You can recover it, and you can throw another one, and enemies will not be able to see you or be aware of you. It's really stupid. It's effective. It's decent. Against robots, I don't really know how well it works against them because of the throw damage, but obviously you could do like the big power attack to deal with robots, but obviously against turrets, it's useless because it does like no damage. So there's that. The farming knife, I think is what it's called, is basically identical to the broken Excalibur. It has very high damage, or it's either high or no, I think it's just high damage. It's not very high. It's high damage, and it's very fast attack speed. And also as a thrown weapon, it does not consistently one-shot, even when fully charged. I think it will randomly one-shot off of a % chance if you have the weapon throw perk, but not at base. Combat stim doesn't affect throwing weapons. Kill momentum doesn't affect throwing weapons. It does affect your basic melee attacks, though. Next we have, let's put these next to each other. All right, this is also identical to these. This has the same stats, but I think it has average attack speed. So I would say it's okay. If you want to run these, they'll be all right. They'll be serviceable. They'll deal decent damage. If you want to just use these as like a melee weapon, it can be fine. I actually don't even recommend it. You can hit enemies with your gun. You can kick enemies, so it's like, why even bother? My melee weapon is a shotgun. That's what I have, a broadside as my melee weapon. That's how I view it. All right, for these axes are weird. I'm gonna put them both in low C tier. They're identical. This one is super common. This one you have to trade for. But they're basically identical. They're average damage, like lower attack speed, single-handed. That the breakpoints are objectively worse than these bladed, fast, high damage weapons. But as throwing weapons, they're basically identical. So if you want to get like a bunch of hatchets and just start spamming them at like druids or something, like if you want to keep like 5 hatchets in your storage for just dealing with druids and just spam them at druids. Same thing with the two-handed axes. When you go to Casterfell, I kind of recommend having like a panic gun and then just throwing axes and hatchets at things. Because they use like bows, like use the bow, use the axes, use the hatchets, conserve your ammo. You don't have to, you can still just like shoot them, but the game is handing you a thing that one-shots when thrown, so you might as well. They always feel like a waste to kill, but that's really where the use case comes in of like these weapons, I would say, is like druid fights. This I think is similar stats. I'll put it here, the military knife. Next we have like the police baton thing. I feel like this is much worse than these. This cannot impale, so as a throwing weapon, it doesn't have that chance to even like one-shot, but these do. So these are just better for that reason, even if their damage is identical. I think it's like average, so it's like the same as this knife, basically. The farming sickle, I think, is the same. And as far as I know, the shiv is the worst. In terms of just raw breakpoints, the shiv has like the lowest damage. So like, if you want to kill things, it's not good at it. It takes more power attacks with the shiv than with any of these weapons, with the builds and with combat stim. But two-handed weapons are way better than one-handed. And also the other advantage of two-handed weapons, like let's say you want to have like two-handed axes and then like 2 guns, like 2 pristine guns or whatever. You free up your small inventory spaces. So if you want to run a bunch of like hand axes to throw, and you have like 3 or 4 of those things in your inventory as like spam throw weapons, that sucks and is not fun. So you're better off just having something that can one-shot on throw, like the two-handed axe or the mace or the cricket bat, than you are having a bunch of spam things. And I did try running like the survival knife, the farming knife. You can't spam Excalibur because it's a one-off. I'm really disappointed that there's no way to get this legit. It'd be cool if there could be like a very high damage one-handed weapon that can one-shot when thrown, and can also like one-shot with a power attack without combat stim like these can versus humans. But unfortunately, one-handed is just notably worse. Someone mentioned that it like multi-hits, like it AoEs. I don't think that matters at all, honestly. I don't want to be in a situation where multiple enemies can hit me simultaneously. I would rather hit one with a throwing axe and then just kill the other one with a mace, or just keep hitting them with throwing axes. You're in control. Like if you're fighting enemies that are melee enemies, and you hit them before they can hit you way outside of their range, that is way better than risking eating chip damage or dying to like set up some kill at less range. The other issue with these is that they lack melee range. The two-handed weapons can one-tap enemies from very far away with the melee attacks, even outside of like the throwing attacks. So you're really just looking at more consistent one-shots with the two-handed melee versus the one-handed, and more consistent kills with throwing them. Whereas like these have a % chance to proc a passive that doesn't even tell you what the % chance is. It seems to be like 15 to 20% roughly, less than 25 for sure, because it doesn't happen a lot. And I was throwing a lot of blades at enemies' heads from full health to test this stuff. Probably too much. So I know for sure which ones are good or not. But also, like, against robots, these are terrible. If you want to attack, like, a robot with these, I did, like, 5 power attacks in a row with combat stim active, and with, like, heavy melee attack power, and the damage wasn't there. It didn't stun them. It didn't vent or overheat. So the high damage versus the very high, and, like, the damage is not equivalent. So, like, even these average damage two-handed have more damage than the high damage one-handed. There's some hidden properties. There's something more to it than just the raw stat. There seems to be some kind of multiplier. I don't know really how the game calculates it, but two-handed melee is just way better per hit damage, especially with power attacks, and especially when thrown. So that's pretty much it for this one. Definitely drop a comment if you agree or disagree and why. If you think they do belong in S tier, or if you think that any of these weapons have some unique feature that maybe I'm just not aware of. For the AoE thing, I would rather kill enemies and not let them bunch up. I usually open fights with grenades or with like sneak attacks. Like if I'm running a melee build, I'll just like whip a few axes from grass or something and then clean up the survivors. Usually prioritizing the ones with guns if I can, because if you're a melee build, fighting enemy melees is easy, but fighting enemies with guns that are shooting you at range is really where the build suffers. You can't really avoid bullets if the enemies have line of sight on you. You might kind of throw their aim off a bit, but if you're fighting like military with fast-firing automatic rifles, they just pick you apart at any range, so kind of hard to run by that. The same thing with like the robots with the miniguns. If they're far away and they see you and they're shooting at you, you're going to eat a lot of damage or die. So that's like the big issue with melee. Now, if you want to use it to conserve ammo, have like a mace or an axe in your inventory, throw it at enemies, or just whack like thralls with, I think that's totally fine. I think that's good. That's probably the best use case. The full-on melee build is definitely a meme, but it can be decent. So I do think some of these belong in A. But yeah, that's it for now. Definitely like and subscribe. Peace.